Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for waiting a few minutes for us. We're still waiting for one of our speakers. Hopefully, she will be joining shortly. Nevertheless, we wanted to start the session already. Today, we're talking about the promise of blockchain for digital identity. So, we hope to have an insightful conversation on how blockchain can revolutionize digital identity. And we really hope to have a very engaging session with the audience. So please feel free to share your comments, your questions. We're really looking out for those. I will start by introducing myself. I work for UNDP Alternative Finance Team as coordinator of blockchain-based solutions. My name is Ana Maria, and I have the pleasure to have here in the room Giorgio Cinetti. He is the Chief Technology Officer of Cardano Foundation. Giorgio spearheads Cardano Foundation's technical strategy and product development through open source, with prior experience as a co-founder and CTO of Procivic AG and software engineer at UBS. I'm just checking if Joe has already joined. I will just introduce her just in case she joins so that you know who else is in the room with us. We also have in the room, still waiting for her, Joe Alum. Joe lives at the intersection of technology and human systems, reimagining how decentralized platforms can transform capital flows from destructive to participatory community benefit models and provide secure identity and data sovereignty systems. She's the director at the Venture Center, core contributor as well at Matu Collective. So, being said that, I have a few questions just to warm up the conversation with Giorgio, but please feel free to share your questions already. So, dear Giorgio, I would like to start with the first question. What do you see as the biggest challenge and opportunity in using blockchain to build digital ID systems that are safe, fair, and work well in different countries?
All right, Anna, thank you for the question and for having me. I'm been working in digital identity since 2017 and blockchain digital identity since 2017 when smart contracts were at the very beginning, and we built a digital identity backed or based on Bitcoin, which was quite, looking back, was quite funny. So you asked about challenges and opportunity. If we start with challenges, what I always struggled, even in my past as a co-founder of a digital identity technology company, was selling the benefits of a digital identity system to government and to financial institutions or insurances. It's very difficult because the added benefits are of a second order effect. They are kind of derivative effects on the opportunities generated and on the cost reduction. To give you an example, like digitizing the digital identity infrastructure for a government might lead to many job losses, in the offices that are issuing the paper-based identities, and so we faced a lot of resistance in my past job when kind of offering this opportunity. They were like, yeah, but then what do we do with all the people working? And the same is true for working with financial institutions. They're like, yeah, we see the promise, but we have invested heavily in our custom onboarding KYC system. And now if we do something interoperable with all other banks, and it's kind of you have this barrier that is very steep to kind of, it makes it difficult to sell. The other side of the coin is the opportunity, right? If you look into digital identity and you think about it for a few days, you realize that the opportunities are massive. You can reduce a lot of bureaucracy and complexity. Imagine, opening a bank account with one click. Imagining ordering all your documents, your medical records in a safe way just by a mobile app. And I think there's other business models and use cases, functionalities that we don't even know exist, a bit like the internet, right? If we create an open standard where people can build on top, like the internet, there's new things can come out. And if you think of electronic voting, or you can think of different ways of governance, fluid democracies, reducing the amount of fraud and abuse. It's all things that is the opportunity of having a trusted, safe digital identity in place.
Yeah, just complementing on your thoughts, within UNDP, we work heavily on digital public infrastructure. So, what are the basics that a society should have to be more tech driven? And one of those bases is digital identity. And as you mentioned, is a key pillar to actually have access to any public service pretty much. And it is unfortunate that we're still at a point where there are more barriers that still have to be overcome to achieve those new systems to exist in the digital world. Um, the second question I would like to share with you, Giorgio, would be how can blockchain protocols like Cardano help ensure that digital identity solutions respect users' privacy and agency, particularly in regions with fragile institutions or low trust in the government?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Again, with personal experience, I worked in Switzerland with government in Switzerland, where the trust in the government was very high, right? And often the need of a blockchain was challenged because it would not solve a real pain point. The pain point in Switzerland was more the bureaucracy, and it's all paper based, right? And so what was compelling value proposition for us was the digitization aspect of it. And on top of that, we did it in a decentralized fashion. However, in other countries where we see also adoption of other form of decentralized products like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, where the trust in institutions and government is very low, adding another layer that removes the need of trust, it's a great added value. And I strongly believe that Cardano, when the use of blockchain is warranted, is one of the best layer one to be picked from, because if you pick a layer one or a blockchain that is not even decentralized, is a private blockchain, you kind of defeat the purpose of having a blockchain in the first place. You could use, in Switzerland, you could use the Swiss government server, and it would be as good as a permissioned blockchain hosted by the telecommunication company, right? Cardano is the largest layer one with the on-chain governance. It's very reliable, and we think is a very good home for anchoring the trust of digital identity solutions. People get scared that putting a digital identity on a blockchain create a different set of risks and problem. But a well-designed digital identity solution does not use the blockchain extensively for data movements. In fact, in digital identity, you don't have the double spend problem. I can prove my identity or something that is true about my identity as many times as I want, and this does not need to be recorded on the ledger, right? So when we think of blockchain-based digital identity, blockchain is just a very thin slice at the bottom of the trust pyramid, but then the magic really happens in the higher level layers of the protocol. And maybe to add that we recognize that the digital identity is very important for unlocking use cases in society. And we released recently an SSI wallet, Veridian is called, and it's based on the Carry DID standard. So it allows also for more complex form of identities. You can have organizational identity, you can have verified sets of data. Is a very advanced open source standard. So we are very excited about that.
It sounds great. Happy to try it out very soon. We already have a few questions coming up from the audience. I'm just going to go ahead and move to those. So the first question says, how do we draw a line when it comes to what goes public and what is private? Identity information is highly sensitive.
Correct. So there's a lot of smart people thought about it a lot, and what we need to put on the blockchain are things that require time stamping and require 24/7 accessibility by the whole community and immutability, and things that are of a transactional nature. For example, if we have a digital identity system that you use for voting, you would want to use the blockchain to publish in a secure manner the outcome of the vote. There's this transactionality about voting, or say redeeming vouchers, based on a specific set of your identity credentials. Like those transactional things, you want them to be obfuscated, but nevertheless being, controlled by a blockchain. And then there's other things like revocation registries, where you publish revocation of the determined credential on chain, always in a privacy preserving manner. You have trust registries, where, for example, you could have every issuer of credential publishing their own address, so that everybody could come back and check the authenticity of issued credentials. So the architects of digital identity have thought hard about it, and they come up with this kind of menu of things that can go on chain and things that do not make sense to go on chain. And people, when they look into it, they are often surprised by how little goes on the blockchain, right? I was discussing, if you have a successful blockchain identity project, not many transactions are going to be generated by it, unless you have things like voting or more transactional nature type of things.
Thank you so much for the answer. I'm gonna move with the next question. Just one sec. For some reasons, I cannot see anything else on the Q&A, but there they are. So this question is from Jorn in Geneva, Switzerland, and is connected to the second question I share with you. So digital identity regulations in the EU or in Switzerland do not rely on decentralized ledger systems. Are there countries that rely on DLT systems rather than on centralized systems with direct government control? Do you know about any cases?
I think there's pilots and there's identity system leveraging blockchain in a way or another. I don't think there's a whole state production, every citizen identity solution that leverages DLT as the main trust layer. So I don't think we are there. Yeah.
So we still have a gap, definitely.
Yeah.
This question comes from Eugenia. She's from Argentina, Eugenia in that case. So her question says, how can blockchain improve digital identity for undocumented or marginalized populations, such as refugees or the unbanked?
I mean, that's I can talk for hours about this, but it's there's many things that come to mind. One is, granting the correct benefits and opportunities to the right people, avoiding fraud and abuse, avoiding trafficking of people, and providing also access to financial instruments that would otherwise require months to start opening, right? So it's something very delicate. I worked in the past with other NGOs to develop such systems, and you can easily get into dystopian territories, because once you do the biometrics identification of people, it gets scary quickly for people at risk, marginalized. But I think the solution is a fair and transparent and privacy preserving digital identity solution that can give access to, it can be stable coins, or it can be access to traditional finance, loans, etc.
This would be probably one of the biggest promise, at least within the work done in the development, is that this could be a solution for those that have usually been left behind. But as you mentioned, although it's a solution, there are still other barriers to overcome to actually make it more practical. Um, and our next question from Andrew would be, why use key event receipt infrastructure, Carrie, if you already have a blockchain?
Yeah, because Carry does not rely on blockchain, right? So it's you, as I mentioned, you don't need to put everything on the blockchain, and you can do those key rotations on a off chain, right? If you desire. So that's why it's kind of, you have these two options. I hope this satisfies this answer.
I will also profit to welcome Joe. Thank you so much for joining us, Joe. We already were attending a few questions from the audience, but I'll be happy to warm you up with a few questions before we get a few more from the audience. So in that sense, Joe, the first question would be, your work has a strong focus on community-led and indigenous approach to digital identity. What lessons can global institutions learn from these models to make digital ID systems more ethical and inclusive?
Namihi, thank you for that. Kia ora koutou katoa ko Joalim aho. I apologize for my delay. It's the middle of the night here in New Zealand, and we have a rather large windstorm outside, which is kind of playing around with my connectivity right now. And that's probably one of the things that it's worth noting about things like digital identity. We need to have off-chain and on-chain, offline and online as well. So in answer to your question, one of the things is global institutions need to kind of shift away from issuing identities to recognizing them. Indigenous people teach us that identity is relational and place-based and collective, not just an individual claim, but a shared affirmation that requires infrastructure designed for stewardship, not for surveillance. And Indigenous people take the lead in this this kind of thinking, the relationships. So if global institutions are serious about equity, they must stop thinking in terms of users and start thinking in terms of guardians, investing in collective authority and cultural infrastructure, not just the tech stacks. So I'm diving straight in there from my point of view from working here in New Zealand in Aotearoa.
That's precisely what we wanted to hear. Based on your experience, what are those insights? A second warm-up question we had for you, Joe, would be, in the push for digital transformation, how do we ensure the blockchain-based identity systems don't replicate existing inequalities, but rather empower communities, particularly marginalized groups?
It's a good question. Technology, as much as we'd like it to, doesn't automatically democratize, right? It reflects the values of those who build and govern it. That's why we're lucky to have organizations like the Cardano Foundation, among others, building this core tech stack. But the greatest lie of digital transformation generally is that it's neutral. It's not. It either amplifies the logic of control or it restores the logic of care for the people that are using it. If we want blockchain to empower and not extract, we need to embed equity, consent, and control at the protocol layer, starting with who gets to define what identity means. Blockchain won't save us from inequality unless it's wielded by those who've felt inequality. If we want to empower the communities, we need to let them lead and fund them and resource them to do that. Viridian, Giorgio's new baby with its Kerry-based decentralized identity focuses on verifiable, portable, and self-certifying identifiers. And one of our teams here in New Zealand, Yumi.ai, its lead engineers and founder are Kerry advocates. So they're integrating Kerry into modular finance tools that actually work with Indigenous polycentric ideas of governance using market mechanisms. So there's lots that can be done, but yeah, the values you begin from and where you lead from is really, really important.
Thank you so much for that reflection. Definitely just remind us that technology is being built by humans, and on humans' errors and inequalities that already pre-exist. It's pretty much the same with AI bias on so many topics, languages, AI, gender gap, and so on. So it's important to remember that the key core of a well-used technology is, of course, these reflections around values and who gets to make those decisions as well.
Yeah.
Those were the two.
Collective identity is something. So genders and individual identities are really important, but collective identities beyond institutional and corporate, institutional identities, collective identities that are cultural are really important as well. And that's a whole new space that's not been explored. It's being explored here with some of the leaders in the data sovereignty movement, thinking about that, because they come from a collective space. When you invite somebody to participate in, some project in Indigenous circles, you're often inviting a group, a collective identity, not an individual. There isn't the same hierarchy. You can't say, I need this person at the top of this business to come and be part of this conversation. No, we need this tribe to be part of this conversation. And so that collective identity needs to be owned by the tribe and everybody in it, which is separate from a very individual identity. Haven't done that stuff yet. It's new.
Really happy we're having this conversation in this space. That resonates a lot. There are so many indigenous groups around the world. For instance, in Ecuador, where I am from, we have 24 different nationalities. And it's exactly what you mentioned. It's just a different way of understanding how you interact with your environment and what is the interaction within the group. And there has to be room for those perspectives in technology as well, definitely. I would like to pick on two more questions from the audience. This one is coming from Adam. So he would like to know, I've worked a lot on digital identity for refugees previously. We were just talking about this with Giorgio a few minutes ago. The common issue I saw was silos, work on digital identity by international NGOs and blockchain CEOs. Do you see a standardization or coordination opportunity between blockchain companies, governments, and international GOs?
Joe, you can go first if you.
So yeah, this touches on one of those previous points. It's not just identity is not just about an individual claim, right? It's about recognition of identities. We have standards. There is collaboration going on. W3C is the obvious place where that work is going on, and there are standards starting to be defined, and there are lots of different people using them. So organizations that are like the Global Acceptance Network and IRIA, those kinds of organizations that are looking at what do we accept, what are we, what are the things the unique capabilities of different kinds of identities, and are we willing to accept those? How are they built? You know, all of the person-to-person trust building of the identity teams, the technicians, the technical people that are building. All of that work is in progress. I'm extremely hopeful. It's not going to be quick. It's not going to happen tomorrow. But then this space is still, we forget how new it really is. You know, it took a long time for us to get the iPhone. Right? Much longer than people remember. So we're still very new. I think there's lots of work still to do, and the contributions of people at the edges with different ideas about identity, as well as those that are kind of, you know, like the Cardano Foundation, right in the middle of the thick of the organizations developing. You know, all need to come together and work together and start building these relationships, like we're doing this afternoon or this evening, or whatever time it is wherever you are.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, first one thing, I think often DID is used in the wrong way. Like, I think here he means decentralized identities, but DID means decentralized identifiers. So I just want to be precise.
The technician, of course.
Yeah, technician, right? Just because I see it's often misused, the DID acronyms. What I would say is that it's definitely an opportunity, but I think that the big push will not come from NGOs and government. I see the real decentralized digital identity coming from the Web3 world, more from similar to the stablecoin trajectory, right? First, it was a kind of a very outside thing that only crazy people would use, and now it's becoming mainstream because people are like, wow, those guys, they know what they're doing. It's cheaper. You can transfer as much money as you want on a Sunday night from X to Y. And I think digital identity will solve similar problems in edge cases in Web3, and then will trickle down into, maybe first finance use cases where the money is and the business value, and then will trickle down to, as I mentioned before, there's a problem with things that do not have a direct business value. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that helping refugees does not have value, right? But I think the stable coins, they have a value for unbanked, but the push did not come from the unbanked. Stablecoin became mainstream because hedge fund, they wanted to move money from the US to South Korea when banks were closed. And I think the opportunity is to create standards in governments and among Web3 enthusiasts, and then those standards will be easy, accessible. There will be wallets, there will be web extensions, and then everybody can adopt those standards. Yeah.
So, George, just to follow up on what you're sharing, sorry, my voice is breaking. So, are you suggesting that actually a key player on sorting out that coordination will come from the private sector and a need related to what the private sector needs?
I don't know. I'm speculating that usually with adoption of open standards like the internet, or now I made the example of stable coins, or if you was smart contracts, there's always this financial incentive. There's an incentive, either a business model or a way of people to raise money, with smart contracts, or a way for shops to sell their goods online and cheaper. And I think for digital identity, there's going to be a business model that is going to be a breakthrough, or a use case that is going to be a breakthrough. Maybe it doesn't need to be a financial use case, could be a nation implementing voting nationwide. And then I think that there's initiatives in Europe and in Switzerland, as mentioned, to make it by law that this nation must have a digital identity. This could be the catalyst as well. Yeah.
Can I build on that?
Of course.
Awesome. What you said about a business model potentially leading this. There's also market opportunities and compliance regimes that are starting to be, coming into effect that are going to drive this as well. And I don't just mean, the digital identity for the New Zealand and Australian government, and the driver's license, and the acceptance, the acceptance and getting past KYC and all of those pieces. I'm talking about stepping back and looking at new businesses, markets for nature, markets for impact, as compliance is required of more and more organizations, that they show on their balance sheet the harm they're doing to the world, the good they're doing for the world. There's going to be new markets for, inputs into economies that, are going to need identity. They're going to need identity for much and identifiers, DIDs, to the point of the questioner, Adam. So yeah, there's lots of things I think could trigger it. There are big global movements like nature markets that can trigger this as well.
Absolutely. We are almost over time. I'm going to take one more question. If we could just spend 1 minute max responding it. The question says, how can DAO help with authenticity for business digital identity solutions?
Georgia, I'll leave it to you first.
Yeah, I'm still processing. Let me read out loud once more. How can DAOs help with authenticity for business digital identity solutions? Oh well, I'm still processing it.
Okay, I'll jump in. I'll jump in
Please, Joe, go ahead.
With a really current example. I just shared another link in the chat. There's a proposal at the moment going forward to the Cardano Treasury. I'm fortunate to be involved with this team. They are innovative. They have done the work over the last decade, and they are literally building an Indigenous DAO toolkit, which has collective identity built in it. That's one of the primitives that they want to design, a protocol that they want to design, because DAOs are certainly in the context of Aotearoa New Zealand, are potentially networks of networks. The polycentric nature of Māori governance, which has been, it's millennia old, is lots of different identities and nested identities and layers of identities. So DAOs need to be able to implement all of those different kinds of identities, so that the need for DAOs is driving the need for digital identity solutions that go beyond the basic, KYC. This is a human. We can accept your digital identity like we would accept your credit card. More than a minute, sorry. Giorgio, have you had time to process?
Yeah. Your answer was very helpful. I mean, it was it took me a bit, but yeah, I do agree with you. I think DAOs are a useful instrument for pieces of the puzzle of building a trustless digital identity solution, right? And being for verifying the personhood, or for voting, or for managing funds, there's a multitude of synergies between DAOs and digital identities.
Thank you so much. I guess this is a wrap up for our session. Just before saying goodbye to the audience, I wanted to share briefly the takeaways that I'm bringing with me. I think it is important when we're talking about such a sensitive and complex thing as our identity, who we are, how we define ourselves, that we remind that the basics of that is the values and how we're trying to understand each other's. On top of that, of course, the use of blockchain and DID. Thank you so much to everyone. I will pass the mic to Giorgio and Joe so that they can also say bye. And that's it for today.
Joe?
Thank you very much indeed. Identity is personal, right? It's very personal. I'm not Indigenous, but my children are Indigenous. I'm a mother of Maori children. So this is personal mission for me. And I think it should be a personal mission for everybody. And we need more people in the space. Do join us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Anna and Joe. Nice meeting you. I hope the windstorm calms down and you get a good night's sleep.
Thank you very much indeed. Good to meet you both.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.